Welcome to In Focus with Eden Lane.
Tonight we return to Opera Colorado during rehearsals for a brand new production of Florencia and El Amazonas. Later we'll visit with the stage director for this production, Jose Maria Condemi. But we begin tonight with the general director of Opera Colorado, Greg Carpenter. This is really so exciting that this is the second opera in your season. Pronounce the name of the opera for us so we all get it right.
Florencia and El Amazonas.
This is going to sound familiar to our viewers as we talk about the story.
Absolutely. One of the things that drew me to this wonderful piece of contemporary opera is the fact that it has this amazing story that is so touching to just about anybody that has access to it. And that's because the librettist for this opera was a pupil of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who wrote, of course, Love in the Time of Cholera. And this opera actually ends where that book begins. So there's a tie-in, and in fact, the composer Daniel Catan wrote in the score that this opera was an homage to Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who he had a great deal of respect for. So it's got that wonderful, compelling story.
It's a contemporary opera, but it's still dealing with all of those same kinds of themes and issues, and musically, it doesn't sound as stark or dissonant as some contemporary operas. Talk about that for me.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting. The minute you say contemporary opera, most people who are opera lovers and are very intimate with opera,
they get rigid, don't they?
Yeah, they glaze over and they say, "Oh my God, that's that stuff that's angular and dissonant, and there's no melody, and I can't enjoy it because it puts me on edge." And in this opera, this music is just glorious, beautiful, Puccini-like music. I liken it very much to sort of the big scope of an MGM film score. It just has melodies galore that you will be able to hum when you leave the theater.
And you'll want to.
And you will. I mean, I have to say, I listen to this opera probably 3 or 4 times a week, just getting more and more of it into my head. And there are times where I can't get it out. I want to get it out of my head because it really has that kind of sticking power. And I think it's not just the music, it's the story that just is so touching of these personal journeys that each of our characters are on that brings about this it's the greater sum of each part that makes this fabulous whole.
It's interesting that the main character, if you will, is an opera diva, which is it's sort of a little surreal in that way.
What a better story for an opera than about an opera diva. It is. It's about Florencia Grimaldi, who grew up in the area of Manaus, Brazil, where there is a very famous, gorgeous opera house in the middle of nowhere. But during her childhood and becoming an opera singer, she aspired to be a great opera diva, and she went off to the great European opera houses, including La Scala, and became very famous. And she has been invited back to sing a concert at the reopening of the Opera House in Manaus after a renovation. And it's about 1910 is when it's set. And she decides to go back. But it's less about going back to sing the concert and more about going back to try to rediscover something in her life that she left behind. And that is a man. Her first love, who said that he would wait for her. He would wait for her to do everything she wanted in her life and achieve her fame. And when she was ready to come back, he would be there for her. So this is it's a journey there's this wonderful physical journey down the Amazon, but there's also this wonderful personal journey that she's on to discover who she is. Now that she's had all the fame, what else is in her life? And she's finding out as she begins this journey that there's very little in her life, and that the most important part of what she wants to accomplish is reconnecting with her former love.
And if you think those themes are too lofty or too far removed, all we have to do is look on television or open a magazine and we see that everyone is interested in those kinds of stories.
Absolutely.
In contemporary
and
culture.
I think what's so compelling about this piece is it does have that cinematographic sort of feel to it. This could be a movie without any music, without, you know, singing or anything. It can be an incredibly compelling piece of theater on its own because it has that deeply personal connection to all of us in some way or another. We've all taken time to stop and evaluate where we are in our lives and what is the next phase. What do we want for the next part of the next 10 years of our life?
And it's one of the very few operas that has this sort of Latino culture running all through it, musically and in sense of place.
Absolutely, because you know we start our journey in Leticia, Colombia, and we end in Manaus, Brazil. It's fabulous that Daniel Catan, who is a Mexican-born American composer, did a lot of study here in the U.S. and in London. But you know his heritage is so deeply rooted in traditional Mexican and South American music. So you know he was able to bring a sense of Latin rhythm to this piece, and you hear it all the time. And the other aspect that I think is just amazing about his music is he knows how to create music that generates the atmosphere of where we are.
Yeah.
So you feel at moments like you can actually tell in the music without seeing anything visually when the boat leaves the dock and begins to move down the Amazon.
It's interesting you say that because I had the pleasure of getting a copy to hear in preparation for your season, so I knew what I could look forward to, and I almost forget that I've never seen this opera.
Yeah. That's how immediate the connection is with the music and the story, is you sort of put aside your preconceived notions about what contemporary opera is, and you immediately immerse yourself in this all-consuming experience that is Florencia and El Amazonas.
So since it's not done that often and hasn't been done in a while,
right,
anywhere, this is a brand new sort of original collaboration that you're doing with another opera company. Tell me about that.
Certainly. You know, when we started looking at doing this opera, we did look at the original production that was commissioned and premiered back in 1996, and then actually represented or remounted in about 2002 at Houston Grand Opera. And although a beautiful production that featured a riverboat in the center of the stage that sort of moved around sort of like a Tournament of Roses parade float, we decided that instead of focusing on a boat as the center of our set, we wanted to focus on the experience that the singers, the actors, the characters are going through, and to get into their minds. And we couldn't do that if it was this big overblown sort of mechanical boat on stage. So we've created a brand new set that is actually the deck of the boat at the front of the stage, and everything behind that is the Amazon River. And so the audience will feel as though they are on the deck of the boat with the singers, with our characters. And the rest of the set is created, the whole river environment is created through projections. And if any members of your viewing audience saw our production of Rusalka last year, which featured a lot of moving video aspect of things to create an underwater environment and so forth, that's what this is going to be. So
and any number of Broadway shows use these techniques.
It's now becoming a very viable way of creating a sense of place, atmosphere, setting
it
for
helps with those
work.
transitions to keep the pacing moving.
Absolutely, and in an opera like this, 2 acts, each of them are only about 40 minutes, so it's not a long evening. There is very little music that creates the transitions between one scene and the next. And in some cases, those scenes, literally, you've got maybe 5 bars of music and you're into the next scene. And so being able to create those transitions by simply changing the mood or whatever through video is so amazing. And so our audience will begin in the town, at the dock in the town of Leticia with, you know, the village behind. And then as the boat moves away, you begin to move deeper and deeper into the jungle along the Amazon.
And then we explore the ship in some scenes. We might be in the engine room or...
Absolutely, and because there's such a mystical, realistic quality about this piece and about the writings of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, we're using those different scenes to create interesting mystical elements. So the engine room actually flies in from above onto the deck of the boat, and the wheelhouse flies in from above. So it really allows the audience to use their imagination to experience that mystical quality of this piece.
It's such a clever concept to put us on the boat. It seems so natural. How did that happen? Because I know you started working with the director very early, which is, as we learned last time, unusual in opera.
Right. You know, when you're creating a new production, what you really have to do is think you have to be very savvy about how do you put together your design team, your creative team that's going to bring this piece to life. And we instantly knew, because of the Spanish language aspect of this piece, the South American or Latin American aspect, we wanted a director who could immediately connect with that. And of course, Jose Maria Condemi was right at the top of that list. And the minute we brought him on board, before we even started talking about concept, we asked him, who have you worked with as a designer that you think could bring about this clean, simple, but highly dramatic production that we're trying to envision here? And of course, he immediately mentioned Philip Linau, who is the associate designer at Seattle Opera. And so, you know, we got them together first and sort of said, okay, we want something clean and simple that's going to focus on the drama.
And that was all you said?
Right, and that's all we said. And 2 months later, we had our first meeting, I think a year ago, almost at this time, where they brought a set model and the basic early designs and inspirational pieces that they had found that gave them their inspiration for the design. And I have to say, we haven't deviated much from that original concept. In that they had thought it out so beautifully. And they had thought about every scene and how each scene would move to the next, and how moving one piece of something or the elements of the video that would create those transitions and move us slowly and in some ways imperceptibly deeper and deeper into the jungle. That was the compelling way that they put this together. And so we sort of layered it. They went to work on that. The next step, of course, is then getting the final designs down in blueprints, just like you would for a house, bidding that out,
and
getting
was built
the bids.
Here in Colorado?
Well, we bid it out to several build firms across the U.S. that do theater design work. And I was just thrilled that, you know, right here in Denver, our own stagehands worked out of our warehouse and had the best bid. And strangely enough, when Philip Linau, the designer, came down from Seattle, very famous opera company with a very reputable, highly reputable scene shop, came down and looked at the first build. They had just gotten the deck done, and before we moved ahead, we wanted to know that Philip felt good about what we were doing. And he said, this is some of the best work I've ever seen. I don't need to come back and supervise anything else. I trust your gentleman to take care of it. And it's been fabulous.
What a vote of confidence.
Absolutely.
And then the projection design also has a Colorado connection, which is just so wonderful.
Yeah, it really is. You know, we've been looking for various people to do projection work for us, and it just came to our attention that Aaron Ryan grew up here in Denver, and he's now doing wonderful work on Broadway and elsewhere in the video and projection design industry. And you know, we invited him to come on in this project, and he was just thrilled to be able to get to work here in Denver in his hometown, and obviously go wherever this production travels to. We are co-producing with Utah Opera, and so he will travel with the production to Utah to implement the video work there. And then as it gets rented by other companies, which we have 3 that will be flying in for opening night to see this and hopefully rent from us.
even though I haven't seen very many details, just hearing the artists talk about it and knowing what this story is, I can't imagine that not only the audiences will love it, but that they won't love it too.
I think it's going to be the best surprise to anybody who picks up a ticket. I'm looking at this as one of the great landmark pieces that we have done in the 29-year history of Opera Colorado.
It's certainly taking Opera Colorado to a different level as a producing company and not just a performing company.
Absolutely. You know, I think that's the hallmark of a great company, both in their own community as well as in the larger community of the opera industry here in the U.S. And to be able to, I just got back from an Opera America board meeting in New York City. Opera America is our national service organization, and to be there with other general directors and to say, hey, you know, look at what we're doing, and to get the enthusiastic response from them on this project and some things that we'll be doing down the road. You know, that's just, it's a seal of approval on Opera Colorado that not every company in the U.S. gets.
And not every audience gets to have an Opera Colorado in their own backyard.
Well, and I really do hope Denver realizes how important it is to have great opera in this city, Opera Colorado, and what a treasure we are, because without it, the landscape of the art scene in Denver vastly changes, and not for the better.
Well, I know that they're going to want to come and see it. So all you have to do is log on to Opera Colorado's website. Make sure you get your tickets because it's a very limited run, as are the operas at Opera Colorado. Come down to the Ellie Calkins and see this wonderful, brand new production.
Fabulous.
And now my visit with the stage director, Jose Maria Condemi. Welcome to Colorado.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've only been here a couple of days.
Yep.
But when did you begin working on this production as the director? Because I know you have a larger role in this production than many directors do in opera.
Well, it's interesting, you know, in a way it's a lifetime work because this is so, the material of this story is so close to what I grew up with, you know, magic realism and the authors that inspired this work, like Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Isabel Allende. I read all of those books when I was growing up, so in a way it started many, many years ago, but the actual work started when the offer was made. I think it was a year and a half ago.
A year and a half?
Yeah.
And so you've had input into the design and the whole approach because this is completely original.
Yeah, and because we wanted to, you know, there's another production that was the original one that many people have in their the one they've seen that one. We wanted to do something slightly different. We wanted to offer a different way of telling the story. So yeah, with my designers Philip Lino and my projection designer Aaron Ryan, we really worked very hard at finding, you know, this other way of looking at the story. So it's been, yeah, a year-long process of negotiating, you know, what are we gonna do.
So where do you begin that work? Where do you begin that whole concept of how you're approaching it differently?
Well, one of the things that I'm interested in the piece is that there's, I would say, the element of scale. You know, when you look at something from afar and you get full picture, like, you know, the jungle, the Amazon River, the beautiful scenery around the characters and the protagonists of the story, which is really important because they're being affected and they're having almost this relationship with the surroundings. But then there's also very intimate moments. You know, this is a legitimate opera with arias and duets and, you know, moments that the characters alone on stage sort of pouring their souls out. So I wanted to make sure that we were able to have these two scales, you know, the big picture and really small. So the way we do that is to the production is approached in such a way that you can see, and we're using digital media, so video and projections.
To see the real place.
Exactly, and then we're also able to zoom in into a character by virtue of closing the world around them, or if you imagine you see a boat, this is a boat trip down the Amazon River. You can see the entire boat, or that you can zoom in one section of it where one character might be alone in her cabin, pondering, life, and then you might
having her dream, or
exactly, or there might be a parallel scene going on, like where we have the engine. We're about to stage this afternoon. The third scene in Act 1. It's about the engine room, but then there's another scene that is going to happen shortly after, parallel, in a cabin. So we'll have these two spaces going on at the same time. So it's almost like a camera in which you zoom in one, zoom out, zoom in another one, bring it all together.
So rather than being cinematic, it's actually taking the tone, the style of the piece, and translating it theatrically.
Exactly, yeah.
And the music, for me, there's a little flavor of Debussy in the score. Does that?
There's a little bit of everything, actually, and there's Stravinsky in it. There's Puccini. I mean, it's
lots of Puccini flavor.
Yeah, we were staging the prologue yesterday, and there's clear South American, almost Caribbean dance rhythms in it too. So it's a very, very versatile and wide-ranged musically drawn piece.
Do you think that audiences will get a real sense of a Latino flavor in this production?
I think so. Well, the story, but also it's very luscious. It's just like the world.
I love that.
The world they live in. This is not just the Amazon River and the rainforest. It's not just the backdrop. It's really, this piece is about this environment starting to affect the lives of these people and forcing them to confront all of their being. Like even Florencia. She is a opera singer and a diva that has triumphed at La Scala, but she's on a different quest on this journey. She's trying to reconnect with a lover that she had once, But it really is about reconnecting with this life force that this river and this environment brings up in all of them.
It's, in addition to all of the spectacle and the theatrical nature of any opera, but it sounds like we're going to experience that here. What is it you hope that the Denver audience takes away with them?
Too many things. That it's never too late to fall in love and reconnect with passion. Two other characters, Paula and Alvaro, they take this trip with the hopes of rekindling their marriage. They come in, we just staged that scene, and they come in, they're fighting and arguing over petty things. And then by the end of the opera, they have completely come back into this very passionate relationship. Rosalba, who is the journalist who's on the boat trying to document this concert that Florencia is going to do in the Opera House, she's also going to fall in love. So really the lesson is like, it might come at the most unexpected of places and unexpected times.
It usually does, doesn't it?
It usually does, right? Yeah, exactly.
So we want them to take away that it's never too late to fall in love.
Never too late to fall in love, and never too late on a larger scale to reconnect with life with capital L, with all of it. And some of it is actually quite terrifying too. There's a storm of mythical proportions going on in the opera, and there's a moment in which it looks like they will die. And in fact, the end of the opera, we don't really know what happens. Catan, the composer, wanted the audience never to really know if Florencia has found Cristobal or if she has died or if she has transformed into a butterfly. It's left open. He wanted it that way. And
they get to decide.
They get to decide. And I've been playing myself as a director with another option, which is we know that an outbreak of cholera sets in at the very end of the opera. That's the reason why the people on the boat cannot disembark when they're almost at Manaus. And I was pondering recently, what if maybe Florencia has been affected from the get-go with cholera, and actually
she brought it with her.
Yeah, and then at the end she's actually hallucinating. So is she really becoming a butterfly, or is she thinking or hallucinating she's becoming a butterfly, or has she found Cristobal for real, this lover from years ago, or is she dreaming that she has found him?
How do you approach staging a contemporary opera differently than a classic opera?
Same way. Absolutely
No difference.
Same way. No difference. You're trying to tell a good story. You know,
a story that sings, as they
a
say.
story that sings. But you know, this opera is actually very, very close to a lot of the quote-unquote traditional repertoire. It's no different than, you know, than the La Bohème or Tosca. But it's the same thing. You know, it just came from Seattle doing Orfeo ed Euridice, and you know, Baroque, and you know, it's a completely different challenge. But in the end, it's all about telling a story and telling it clearly, I mean, with a specific point of view.
And it seems with passion.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely, yeah. But it's going to be a good story, you know.
I know this production is a collaboration with another opera company. Will you be going to that opera company as well?
Exactly.
And when will that take place?
I think it's at the end of this year. I think it's at the end of this year that it's planned.
So you'll have a big gap between whatever lessons you learned here at Opera Colorado before you go to Utah.
Exactly, and I don't know if any of my singers here will be coming to Utah or not, but you know, new people bring their own ideas, and this is the great thing about, you know, this is about human condition, and at the base of the story. So you know, a different cast may bring different ideas that I would like to use as well.
I know your projection designer is from Colorado.
He's from Colorado, Aaron Grine, and he also has a really important career in New York. He actually just finished doing a show on Broadway, Bonnie and Clyde. So projections and digital media will be very important in this production.
I think that instead of becoming a gimmick, if it's used correctly, it liberates you to tell the story.
Absolutely, yeah. We are being very conscious of not making sure that it doesn't take over, you know, the singers or the storytelling that's going on with the performers.
Well, before we met, I was very excited to see this production already, just from knowing the score and from knowing the story and knowing it was brand new. And now hearing you describe it, it has that extra twinkle. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Of course, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Don't miss the regional premiere of this brand new staging of Florencia and El Amazonas at Opera Colorado. Visit their webpage for more information.
That's all for this edition. Remember to join us on Facebook and Twitter. With all that Colorado has to offer, we're here to help you keep it in focus. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Snugglebug.